Megan, I have a quick question for you. If you can go off mute. I notice when I go into mute, I only have the choice of sending a text to Denise, Megan, or Mark. Is that going to be true for the participants also? And maybe we should direct them to send them to you as opposed to Denise or Mark.
Uh,
Correct. On all accounts. So Megan's script will request that they send them in the chat. And if it didn't say that, Megan, you absolutely should suggest they send them to you in the chat.
oh, just me? Okay, I thought it was to
Or
everyone.
everyone. Or actually, excuse me,
Everyone doesn't come up as a choice.
everyone's not a choice, just to Megan.
Oh, okay, just to me then.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I didn't notice that until just now.
Actually, I thought we were going to do everyone. I think let's change that. Let's everyone publicly.
Yeah, people are used to everyone. That way people can see if somebody's already asked a question.
Yeah.
Okay, is that an
that's
option?
yes.
We can give them the option to send it to everyone or just to me.
Options there.
You probably want to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, now everyone's in there. So I think people are used to putting a question into to everyone. So
okay, cool. We'll do it to everyone. Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. My name is Megan Smith. I have been a Toastmaster for 4 years and most recently had the opportunity to compete in the Area F1 International Speech Contest. Welcome to Coming Together, the District 4 Annual Conference. This is the educational session, 30-Year War. Before we begin, I will share announcements and acknowledge the dignitaries who are in attendance. The webinar is being recorded. By turning on your camera or asking questions, you consent to being recorded, and by District 4's opinion, shared on YouTube. Please mute yourself and turn off your camera. You will have the opportunity to unmute and turn on your camera to applaud at the end of the webinar. Please enable Zoom's hide non-video participant setting as described in the slide. To enable this on most platforms, click the arrow next to the Start Video button in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom window. This will open the video settings. Check the Hide Non-Video Participants checkbox. Later, you will have the opportunity to ask questions via public chat. Please limit comments in the public chat to questions and responses for the speaker. Now, let us acknowledge the District 4 dignitaries and candidates attending the event. Please feel free to unhide your camera as I call your name. Program Quality Director and District 4 Direct-Elect, Distinguished Toastmaster, Timothy Carlisle. Club Growth Director and Program Quality Director-Elect, Distinguished Toastmaster, Jennifer Perry-Ruzick. Division B Director, Distinguished Toastmaster, Denise Singh. Division D Director and DLC nominated candidate for Public Relations Manager, Greg Athis. Division F Director and Club Growth Director-Elect, Mark Prince. Past District 4 Director, Distinguished Toastmaster, Catherine Pratt. Past District 4 Director, Distinguished Toastmaster, Susan Swope. District 101, Area G3 Director, Joanna Tong. Did I miss anyone from inside or outside the district? Please unmute yourself and share who you are. Wonderful. I will briefly explain the format of today's educational session. We will be hearing 2 talks from our Jeopardy champion, Dennis Chase. First, we will hear about the 30-year journey towards becoming a Jeopardy contestant. And secondly, we will hear about the day in the life of a Jeopardy contestant. As you listen to the speeches, please keep in mind any questions that you have for Dennis, and you'll have the opportunity to ask these questions after each of the 2 speeches. We will now begin with the first speech. 30 Years Wars is the story of Dennis Chase's 30-year journey to be a Jeopardy contestant. Dennis shares game show and life lessons observed along the way that we can all use to reach our own personal goals. Please help me welcome Dennis Chase with his speech, 30 Years War. 30 Years War, Dennis Chase.
So I know some of you came here expecting a lively debate about the European conflict from 1618 to 1648. Well, that's not going to happen. That 30 Years War. I'm actually going to talk about my 30 Years War to become a Jeopardy contestant. In this part, I'm not going to give you insider secrets about being on the show itself, but hopefully step back and give you a higher perspective and talk about how game show lessons can actually lead to life lessons and help us in the journey and the pursuit of our own goals. So I have a few major points that I'm going to go over. Some of you who have heard this speech before, this is kind of the expanded TED Talk version. So hopefully there's some new content that you will appreciate. So I have a few main points that I'm going to go over, but I'll come back and mention them one by one. Persevere, environment, study, you, motivation, simplify, focus, pause, and celebrate. You don't have to remember them all. I'll go over each one in turn. So first of all, persevere. Well, that's really the whole point of this speech, is to talk about perseverance. You really have to keep going to reach your own personal goals. In 1990, I was in Los Angeles and I decided I would go and audition for Jeopardy. I know that's probably before some of you were born, but that was 30 years ago. Between going to LA and auditioning actually on the set, the brain bus that came to San Francisco, and the online test, I probably passed the Jeopardy test about 25 times. So what happens when you pass the Jeopardy test? Well, then if your name gets picked out of a random sampling, you then go on to play a mock game and you have a personality interview. So basically, they want to see if you're the right caliber for Jeopardy. And that still goes on during COVID, although it's all done during June, over Zoom. So I passed the Jeopardy test about 25 times, which means I probably failed the personality test about 25 times. Doing it that many times requires perseverance, or as some may say, a little bit of craziness. But I like to say it's perseverance, or maybe being stubborn. The Jeopardy people estimate that about 150,000 people take the online test each year. So you have to have perseverance and grit to even make it onto the show. So I want you to think about, what is your long-term goal? What are you in journey towards? And is it worth soldiering on and having the perseverance to get there? Point 2, environment. A lot of game shows and businesses closed during the COVID shutdown, but the game shows and other television shows decided that they were going to keep filming during the pandemic. In June 2020, they put out a set of precautions. And for game shows, it means that they limited the contestant pool to what they called driving distance only, which basically meant California, Western Nevada, and Southern Oregon. So what that meant for an individual like me or you is that the contestant pool went from this big to this big, and therefore your chances for getting on were greater. I took that information and was up for a number of different game shows, including Jeopardy, The Weakest Link, The Chase, and the Great American Baking Show. Jeopardy was the one that called, so they got the benefit of my attendance. But it makes you think, what has changed in the environment on your path to your goals? Are there new roadblocks in the way? Or maybe there are new paths that you can use to success. Maybe the environment has changed to your benefit. Point 3, study. I actually got the call on January 26th. I was so excited, but I tried to keep it in control. So on the call, they say, can you come to Los Angeles February 16th and 17th? Oh, by the way, this is the Jeopardy people calling. And in the background, I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I said, yes, I can make that time available. I can be there February 16th and 17th. Now, those of you who are doing the math means that I only had 3 weeks to prepare for the show. How do you study and how do you prepare for a show that could ask anything under the sun? Well, for me, I think what was successful was focusing on my weak points and the questions that I knew came up more frequently. So I'm in the sciences. I wasn't about to study math and sciences with only 3 weeks to prepare. I actually made flashcards for some areas that I knew I was weak in. Information about the states capitals, world capitals, American presidents, world capitals, all of those I had flashcards for that I made. The other important way to study is to watch and study whatever show that it is that you want to get on. You get to know how they ask questions, how the game is played. So, thinking about the larger picture, if you're in a project or you're working towards a goal, how are other similar goals being done? Are there any things you can watch and any things that you can study to make it easier for you? I knew my studying was going well when one of the subjects I studied was Shakespeare. And one night when I was watching, I ran the Shakespeare question category, got every question right. So that made me feel like I was doing much better. So in terms of your goals, what can you do to get ready? What can you study in order to prepare and practice? I actually watched 4 shows a day in order to get ready for the show. So, and during most of those, I would practice as if I was a contestant with the buzzer, with lights in my face, like I have on now, and actually standing up. All of those things prepare you for the actual environment for the show and help you when you're studying. Point 4, you. In other words, showing them the best you. Now, I think it's best to be yourself when you're applying for something like this, but you can be the best version of yourself. Toastmasters helps a great deal here. I mean, when you get on the show, those conversations that you have with the host, that's table topics. Table topics are great practice for that. Also, just by being a speaker, you learn how to think on your feet and respond quickly in a situation. Those are great and they all help you when you're on the show. But Toastmasters helps you a lot before you even get on the show because of the audition process. They tell you during the audition process, we want somebody who people will invite into their homes. They want to invite energetic people who use vocal variety, who enunciate, and who can be heard, who project. So they don't want people who are going to say US capitals for 200. They want people who are going to say US capitals for 200. And all of this practice in Toastmasters is great help to get through the audition process. Also, all of this practice that you're getting with being on camera and lighting and using the camera going in and out, that's great practice for a Jeopardy audition. You also need to send in a photo with your application and pick a good photo that's going to be remembered. The photo that you saw before I started talking of me and my cat Studley watching Jeopardy, they remembered that photo. When I had the audition, they said, oh yeah, you're the one who had the photo with the cat. Be the best you and the most positive version. Point 5, motivation. Why is your goal important? What do you expect to learn or achieve with it? They ask you this over and over when you audition for Jeopardy. Why do you want to be a Jeopardy contestant? And evidently it was okay to say, because I want to show that I'm a smart person in front of as many people as possible. And on the best game show. They also ask you, what would you do if you won a lot of money on Jeopardy? And this may have been the difference between me getting on the show this time. They call this your backstory, the story that would interest people in you. So my brother is a veteran of both Gulf Wars, and in the last few years, his quality of life has become more difficult. He and my 2 sisters decided that they were going to combine households so that they could help take care of him better. It's a little bit more complicated than it sounds because Tim lived in Virginia and my sisters lived in Massachusetts. So what they had to do was sell Tim's house, sell Terry and Kathleen's house, and then buy a 3rd house and then all move in together. So I pledged even before I made it through the audition process that if I got on the show, I would use part of my winnings toward that transition for all 3 of them. And every time I told that to the Jeopardy people, they all went, oh, I mean, it sounds hokey, but it's a true story and it made me memorable. So what motivates you around your goal? What do you hope to learn? What do you hope to achieve? You're going to get asked about your project or your goal all the time. So what is your backstory? What is your elevator story that you can tell to sell people on your project and yourself? 6, simplify. As I said, I tried out over 20 times for Jeopardy with the former contestant coordinators, Maggie and Glenn, to the point where I swore they had a vendetta against me. Oh, we've seen him before, cross him off. When I actually went in and taped the show, I asked them, can you check in your records to see how many times I took the test? And they said, well, we don't keep those records, at most about 5 years. So they couldn't actually tell me that, which made me think that they didn't actually have a personal vendetta against me. It probably was the way that I presented myself. It reminded me of Occam's razor. If you're familiar with it, it's basically the principle that the simplest answer is probably the right one. The simplest answer was I just wasn't presenting myself well, not that the contestant coordinators hated me. So simplify. I have one more example of simplification. We were taping during February when COVID was still, really crazy. And I had on 2 masks all the time. The only time you're not masked is when you're actually on the stage at the lectern. So I had on a KN95 mask, but because of my beard, that really hurts my ears. So I had some of my friends who were making custom masks make a larger mask that could accommodate the KN95. I'm going to zoom in so that you can see the fabric a little bit more clearly. So you can see all the stars, and hopefully you can see that there's glitter all through the mask. About a half an hour into the taping day, I noticed I had glitter all over my clothes. About 45 minutes in, it was all over the seat. And about an hour in, it was all over the rest of the contestants. The Jeopardy people were not happy about that. So they gave me what I think is the smallest lint roller ever seen to man. This is my hand. This is the official Jeopardy lint roller. And they told me I had to change my mask. No more glitter. So sometimes simplification makes a lot of sense. What is getting in your way? What can you do to simplify the path to your own goal? 7, focus. When you're nearing your goal and you're progressing, focus, pay attention, and listen. A couple examples. Pay attention to the large blinking signs that are blocking your path. I had on new clothes because my COVID clothes didn't fit anymore. When I was on the show, and I had to walk over to the Final Jeopardy platform, the Final Jeopardy monitor. That is a huge monitor. It's about 9 feet off the ground. And I was wearing new shoes. I tripped and I almost fell directly into the Final Jeopardy monitor, which is literally a large blinking sign. Second point, don't look at the scores because there's nothing you can do about them anyway. Every book that I read from former champions said, don't look at the scores unless there's a daily double, when you actually have the chance to affect the scores. Focus on what you can change, not on everything else that's going on. Another focus point, there are 6 cameras on the Jeopardy stage. Yes, 6. Which one do I talk into? What do I say? They will tell you. Listen to the people who will help you progress and do the right thing on your goal. And finally, they give you at the beginning of the day, I mean, the makeup people are 6 feet away, just like everybody else. They give you a powder puff with powder for your skin tone. So at every commercial break, you're sitting there and you're touching everything up. Of course, I have to touch up more than most people. So I'm touching up, and I hear, Dennis, use the other side. I had been using the side of the powder puff that was actually taking makeup off. So focus, pay attention so that you're not doing things that are counterproductive to your own progress. Point 8, pause. Sometimes reality gets in the way, and that's okay. It's not an excuse, it's not a time to procrastinate, but it may cause you to refocus. I had a chronic illness in 93 and 94, and it almost killed me in 1995. During those years, I was not trying out for Jeopardy. It was not my highest priority. Staying alive was, and that's okay. Has the pandemic derailed maybe some of your planned path to your own goals? Or maybe you can innovate and rededicate and recommit yourself to your own goals. Whatever happens, if you need to pause, that's okay. And my last point, number 9, celebrate. When you finally reach your goal, celebrate. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Whether your goal is feeding the family for the night or getting a promotion, or maybe even becoming a Jeopardy champion. Now on Jeopardy, they tape 5 shows a day. And when you actually win, from that moment on, every single person on the set calls you champ. And that, let me tell you, is a really special moment that I will never forget. I'll probably put it on my tombstone. Only fewer than 400 people actually make it onto Jeopardy, and only a fraction of those become a Jeopardy champion. So I will be celebrating this goal for the rest of my life. What you get to see if you watch the shows with somebody in new clothes, with new COVID gray, and somebody who was living a lifelong dream and reaching an important goal. I hope you enjoyed this 30 years war, and I hope you enjoy the journey to your own goals, even if they don't involve a game show. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That was wonderful to hear. We now are in a portion of the session in which we have the opportunity to ask Dennis anything we'd like. And so I encourage everyone to, in the public Zoom chat, ask their questions, and I will read those out to Dennis.
I'm going to go off camera for about 5 seconds.
Okay, we'll let Dennis take a break.
Okay, we're good.
Cool. I see one question that just popped up from Susan. I only saw your last show from her. How many times did you appear and how much did you win?
So let me just remind you that the shows were taped in mid-February. The shows were broadcast on April 9th, 12th, and 13th, and I won a total of $50,400. Not, you could say not bad for 2 days work, but you know, theoretically it's 30 years of work getting ready for the show and always being practicing and for the test and things like that.
Nice. That must have felt good to win. I'm sure everybody is curious. Have you spent the money you won on anything in particular, or are you saving it?
Part of the money has already gone towards helping my brother and my 2 sisters. With some of the things that you always need to do around a new house, like an electric box, a bulkhead, which is in New England, that's the stairs down to the cellar. But as I'll explain in the A Day in the Life of the Contestant, I actually haven't gotten the check yet.
Oh, wow. You're a very nice brother. Next question. What was the toughest question you successfully answered? The one that had you on the brink, if any?
Yeah, there are a number of questions where I have no idea where I got the answer from. It's not something that I knew I had in my memory, but I got the answer right anyway. So one of them, it was in a question of first lines from literature. And I think this was on the first day. The question had to do with fly fishing. And I said, there's only 2 books that I can think of on fly fishing, which is The Complete Angler by Isaac Walton or A River Runs Through It. Now, I have never read A River Runs Through It. I have never seen the movie, but I figured a 50-50 chance was pretty good. And I said A River Runs Through It, and I was right. So no idea where that answer came from, but I got it right. There was another question, I think it was on the second day. I do not know much about sports and I do not know much about cars. But there was a question that basically said this person partnered with Healy to make an automobile. And somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind, I knew there was a kind of car called the Austin Healy. How I know that, I don't know. Maybe it came up in James Bond or something like that. But I got that question right. So when you do trivia contests, or you do college bowl, or you do high school quiz, sometimes you just have to open your mind up and say, what could the answer possibly be? And sometimes it comes to you and sometimes it doesn't. Those of you who have seen my first show, the answer to Final Jeopardy, and I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it, I did readings from that book when I was in high school. I know that book backwards and forwards. The fact that I couldn't name that book, I mean, I only lost $800, but It still bugs me to this day. But the contestant coordinators say to us, let it go. If you miss something, it's over and done with. You need to let it go. And that's really sage advice so that you don't sit there and fret about something for the next 15 minutes and then miss another 3 or 4 questions.
That's good advice. I was able to see that last clip of Jeopardy on YouTube. It was cool. And I'm always amazed how Jeopardy contestants, to me, know everything.
It's great to know a little bit about a lot of things.
Right. Let's see. Did you ever slam the button before you knew the answer?
Well, that's kind of interesting. You cannot buzz in until the question has finished. So if you know the answer, what you have to do is, okay, you can read the entire question. You might know the answer a couple of seconds before you can buzz in. So you have to sit there and keep the answer in your mind and then remember to buzz in when it's time. And then when you buzz in, hopefully be able to recall the answer again. Most of the time when I buzzed in, I knew the answer ahead of time. There's probably 1 or 2 times when they read the question and it took me a couple of seconds to remember the answer. But most of the time, it was that situation where you're sitting there with the answer in your head, and then you have to remember to buzz in, and then you have to remember what the answer was. So it takes a little practice. That's why practicing at home is really useful.
Nice. Are you able to get one of those things at home to practice with?
It's really good to practice with a ballpoint pen. No, they're not going to send you a Jeopardy buzzer to practice with at home, but a ballpoint pen works really fine because you can hear it click. And when you go to an audition, they will tell you, you don't just do it once, you do it a number of times. I'm saving for the next portion the social media commentary about the way that I use the buzzer.
Sounds good. We look forward to that. One question I'm curious about is, where did your love for game shows and Jeopardy begin?
Well, that's a great question. Not many people ask that. My grandfather used to watch Jeopardy, so I think that's perhaps where it started. And I think when I used to watch the show with him and my grandmother, I started answering questions when I was like 4 or 5, and they were just floored. Probably mostly in children's literature, but I was really heavy when I was younger, so I wasn't very good at sports. And I think when I found something that I was good at, I ran with it. So, trivia and the tests of knowledge, that was kind of my sports.
Nice. I'm sure your whole family is very proud of your accomplishment. Something else I have on mind as a question is, you kind of mentioned how you studied the 3 weeks before you were asked to go to Los Angeles. I'm curious how you kept up the studying over the 30 years. Did you ever lose the motivation?
I did not study every night for 30 years. But for example, if they said the online test is coming up on January 31st, I would probably study for all of January. And especially those questions that come up frequently on the show, which if you watch the show to prepare, things like facts about the states, state capitals, world leaders, US leaders, things like that. Those come up just about every show.
Nice. Would you say that you have watched every single Jeopardy episode?
Certainly in the last year. I have not watched I probably watched every show in the last 5 years. Part of which was getting ready for being on the show.
Nice. One question came up in chat. You must be really good at trivia, Killer.
There are some people who will not play trivia games with me. When I was really little, I don't remember this, but we had a concentration game, which basically has puzzles in it. And evidently, when I was like 4 or 5, I memorized all the puzzles so that I could win the game. So none of my brothers or sisters would play that game with me afterwards. But some trivia games are better than others. Trivial Pursuit, I am pretty good at, and I win trivia contests on the radio. But it all depends. You ask me pop culture, you ask me sports. Probably anybody here in the meeting could beat me at that.
Interesting. I would definitely not put money on trivia. for myself against you.
Why don't we take one or two questions more, and then I'll walk you through a day in the life of the contestant.
Sounds good. If anyone has any lingering questions, please post in chat. In the
Have we
meantime,
answered most of them already?
yes, I don't see any new ones in the chat.
Okay, then why don't I go ahead and walk you through a day in the life of a contestant, and that might answer some questions that people have in the back of my mind, in their mind.
Sounds good. We'll give you a few seconds to prepare for your next speech, and I will introduce the next section. In this next section, Dennis will take us, as he mentioned, through a typical taping day of a Jeopardy contestant during COVID precautions. It's not all bright lights, glamour, and signing autographs. It's about rules, behaviors, and wardrobe. And I guess they don't like glitter. Please help me welcome again our Jeopardy champion of the hour, Dennis Chase, with his part 2 speech titled Day in the Life, Dennis Chase.
Thanks, Megan. So, like I said, I got the call 3 weeks ahead. So I want to tell you what it's like to be a contestant. And it's not just the day of the event. So about 2 weeks ahead, you want to book your travel and lodging. So Jeopardy does not pay for either of those unless you're called back for something like the Tournament of Champions. So you have to plan your own travel and lodging. You have to plan your wardrobe, and they do give you some guides on your wardrobe, that it should be business interview, which is basically like a jacket and tie, excuse me, or a nice sweater for men. There were more descriptions for the women because when you're on the show, you have a microphone, but that wireless microphone has a battery pack, and there has to be someplace on your clothing where you can hang the battery pack. In most men's clothing, you've got like a chest pocket or a pants pocket, but they advise the women, if you're going to wear a dress on the show, you may need to wear a belt with it so that we can hang the microphone pocket somewhere. So you need to think about your wardrobe. The other thing you need to think about, which they advise you against, is certain, you want to avoid stripes, polka dots, and loud prints. And I'm going to show you why. So this is a print. If I put it on the camera and I move it, it kind of hurts your eyes and it gives you a headache. That's called strobing. So that's why they want you to avoid things like polka dots and stripes like that. Because if you move, it looks really, really bad on camera, and you don't want people going like this to the screen. You also need to plan your makeup, because during COVID, no one's going to put your makeup on. So if you've ever done this stage makeup, you're fine, but you may want to test out your makeup before you go to the show so that you don't look completely awful on national television. And of course, you want to study, and 2 weeks ahead, you want to find something that proves your social security number, a paycheck stub or a W-2, because they're going to require that of you. So that's 2 weeks ahead. The day before taping, you have to take a COVID test, a rapid COVID test in Los Angeles. Now, if you flew in from someplace else, again, that's pretty rare because most people were within driving distance. You had to take a COVID test 2 weeks before you got on the plane. You also, the day before taping, have to plan your snacks, because craft services isn't going to be working at all during COVID. And they tell you, and when you prepare to be a contestant, you need to bring your own water, coffee, tea, snacks, and these should be things that you can prepare rapidly, not putting a sandwich together, because you may only have a short period of time where you can do the snacks. So now you've arrived at tape day. And that means that you need to check in at Sony Pictures Studios in full costume, in full dress up, in makeup at 7 a.m. Woohoo, 7 a.m. in the morning in the parking garage. That's in Culver City. So when you're all checked in, I call it the Wheel Corral. The place where we've spent most of our time was in the audience area for Wheel of Fortune. Their studio is right next to Jeopardy. So at 7:15 a.m., when you're really, really smart, they start the contestant briefing. So what is the contestant briefing about? Well, they're going to talk about rules and regulations, things you can say and things you can't say. And while they're going over that for like 2 hours, They're also going to be placing the mic on you. They're going to be checking your makeup, and they're going to be giving you the magic plastic bag. Ooh, I hear you say the magic plastic bag. So in the plastic bag, you have everything that you can bring onto the set, which is a very, very tiny bottle of hand sanitizer. For me, I had the tiny lint brush. You have a very tiny water bottle, probably about 2.5 ounces. You have tissues. I added cough drops. You have the powder puff, which you've already heard me refer to, and you have your mask or masks. So all of that goes in a little plastic bag. We'll refer to this again later. Some of the rules and regulations that they go over. You cannot mention any products on television. That's why I said tissues and not Kleenex. You cannot swear, obviously. Everything you say on the show for an answer has to be in the form of a question. Fortunately, I got that right all of the time. Here's a fun one. There are certain wagers you cannot make because of them being signal numbers. You cannot, for example, bet $69. You cannot bet $666. You cannot bet $88 or $1,488 because those are numbers that evidently signal neo-Nazis. Here's a fun one too. You cannot sing your answer. They really don't want you to do that because if it's a popular song, that means it's copyrighted and they have to pay for it being on the air. So they will tell you, even if it's a song, please don't sing it. They have to get rights for it. And you have to be very careful of your gestures. When I was on the show, there was somebody next to me who wanted to do the horns, you know, the rock and roll. And they said, no, you cannot do that on the air because some people may think it's a sign of the devil. So they will tell you if you can't do some gestures. So this is what they go over during the contestant briefing. All of these rules, all of these regulations, all of the legal stuff. About 9 a.m., you have your first break. So that means you get to go outside and stand in the parking lot 6 feet away from everybody else and eat the snacks that you brought. You know, it's not glamorous, but it's important because you want to keep your blood sugar up. Your adrenaline is really running all day long. Just after that, you have your rehearsal, which is really important. You actually get to go on the set and practice on the actual stage. So let me tell you what they make you do when you're actually standing on the stage behind the lectern when it's your turn. They say, okay, reach into your little magic plastic bag and take out your hand sanitizer and sanitize your hands. Now you may take off your mask and put it in the little plastic bag and take the little plastic bag and put it down on your feet for the entire duration of the rehearsal. I mean, they get really prescriptive about how they expect you to act. During the rehearsal, you get your time with the buzzer. You get to see where all the lights are. You get to see where all the cameras are, and you get to practice with the buzzer. It's really invaluable practice. They go through half a round, and the contestant coordinators will tell you whether you're buzzing in too fast or too slow. About the buzzer. So the way the buzzer works is you have a half a second from the time that the host finishes reading the question. And at that time, they enable the buzzers, and there are 2 little banks of lights that show on either side of the board. You can't see it on TV, but these lights come on. So you either have to listen for the words to end or you listen for the buzzer. If you ring in before that half second, you're locked out for 2 seconds. If you ring in too late, somebody has beaten you to it and you're out of luck. Most of the contestants, if you watch the show, know most of the answers, but they got beaten on the buzzer. So this rehearsal is really important for you to get the chance to play with the buzzer. If things are going well, around 10 a.m., you tape the first show of the day. If you weren't one of the people picked to be on the first show, then you get to sit in the audience with the rest of the contestants. If you're doing the math during COVID, that means that there are 10, count them, 10 people in the audience. So they add to the audience sounds. They bloom it with an audience track. They just admit it because there's only 10 people in the audience. There's about 20 crew people and they're applauding too, but it's never going to sound like a real audience. If everything's going well, you take the second show about 11:30, and then at 1 p.m. you get to have lunch, which is in the parking structure. That's about the only place that's got enough room for the distancing, and it worked out fine. But you get to take off your mask. The only time you take off the masks again is when you're practicing on stage or when you're eating. So you better make sure your mask is comfortable. Around 2 p.m., you're done with lunch and you tape shows 3, 4, and 5. By the luck of the draw, I wasn't up until show 5. So show 5 became my show. And this is what we're going to talk about now. When you're actually on the show, when you finally get picked for your particular show, they have you record 2 things before the show even starts. The first is the introductory segment when they say, he's a project manager originally from Hyannis, Massachusetts, Dennis Chase. They time that before the show. They record it before the show, so that it doesn't, you don't do it wrong when they're going live with the real show. And they also tape a promo for your local TV station called Hometown Howdies, which are really hokey, so I'm not going to go over it. They never showed mine anyway, but all of that happens before you do the show. I kind of want to orient you to where everything is on the set because you see them give some of this away. So on your right-hand side, sorry, the camera is mirroring. On your right-hand side, you have the big flashing Final Jeopardy board. Right next to that is the host, and directly in front of you is the game board, just like it appears on TV. What you don't see on TV, and just to the left of the game board, is a video monitor where they show the video daily double clues. Right above that are the 3 contestant cameras, and right above that is the scoreboard. So sometimes you will see a contestant, especially if they hit a daily double, look and then go up to the right so that they can check the scores. Right next to that is the overhead camera, where sometimes when they show those overhead shots, and next to that is the host camera. Behind that are the judges, and then you have the whole audience area with about 15 or 20 more people who are sound people and things like that. So I just did a sweep across the stage so you know where everything is. Again, they will tell you if you need to look into a camera. You don't need to really pay any attention to that. And the game starts. Now they record in real time, so they don't stop for anything unless there's a really bad technical glitch. When the show starts, you actually hear that upbeat theme music at the beginning. So you're sitting there and they're playing the music, and I'm trying not to be nervous because I know we're about to start the show, so I'm going to breathe and try not to pass out. That's really what's going through your mind. So you get to the first commercial. They've played half the first round. They will come over, they'll tell you to touch up your makeup, and they'll give you buzzer advice. You're ringing in too fast, you're ringing in too slow. There's actually a computer that analyzes that. That's when you come back from commercial, that's when you're going to have the chat with the host with your story. And if you're in Toastmasters, you will have rehearsed your story so that you can sound like an eloquent person and be fun in front of a national audience. You move on to Double Jeopardy, and that's where you have 2 daily doubles. Now in my game, the game on Friday that I won, again, I'm not looking at the scores. I have no idea where I am. I'm trying to focus on the board. I'm not even looking at the host. And it wasn't until I hit the second daily double, the one about Florence Nightingale, where I actually checked the scores and I saw it could actually be a runaway. So I bet accordingly. When we got to Final Jeopardy and the break before it, I realized I had already won. And I almost burst into tears because it had been 30 years. But I started taking deep breaths. I actually leaned over the lectern and I tried to take in as much of the moment as I could, to try and take it all in. I already mentioned earlier, I missed the Final Jeopardy question, and I was sitting there because they have to make sure that everything recorded. You're sitting there for a couple of minutes after the show. I'm saying, boy, my family's going to shoot me. My brother's going to shoot me. I missed that question. I know that book backwards and forwards. And Jennifer, who is to my right in the second position, turns to me and says, "Shut up, you won." Now, she said it a little nicer than that, but that really, made me think about what I was doing. So I didn't complain about missing the Final Jeopardy question anymore. I let it go. Now, if this wasn't the final show of the day, if you were the winner, they'd hustle you to the corral. You changed all your clothes, make sure your makeup foam was okay and your makeup was okay. But because the last show of the day, we immediately recorded my champion segment. And then that's when they talk to a winner and say, what was it like? And they asked me the question, who's going to be, I'm starting to get emotional right now. Who's going to be proudest of you being a Jeopardy champion? And I started thinking about my brother and the hard life that he's had and his injuries and moving in with his sister. And I had to say, I had to stop and say, can we start that again? And Sarah of the crew who was doing the interview said, it's okay to be emotional when you've reached a goal that you've had for your entire life. And that really put it into perspective. When you finally do lose, you have to sign a ton of forms, and you can stay and watch other shows or not, depending on what your mood is. Now, a question that I referred to earlier, I have not gotten my check yet from my wins. They have up to 120 days to send the money. And that's because the advertisers have to have the chance to see the show and make sure that their advertisement aired. And then they have 45 days to send Jeopardy the money. So that's why I haven't gotten my check yet. But you can be sure when it comes, I'm going to take a picture of that check and I'm going to hang it on my wall for the rest of my life. So that's basically a day in the life of a Jeopardy contestant. Hopefully it answered some questions for you, but now you have the chance to ask a few more questions if you want to know what it was like, other than thrilling and exciting.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for the second part of your Jeopardy experience, the day in the life.
Oh, sorry, something I forgot to answer. Because my first show was on one tape day and the second show was on the second tape day, I got to go through the entire process again at 7 a.m. the next day, including 3 hours of orientation that I was already oriented to. So I did see the question that came up on the board. I didn't get much of a chance to plug Toastmasters, but I did a little bit during the champion overview. If I had been on for more days, I surely would have been able to mention Toastmasters, but you know, it was down the list on the interesting things about me that the host had to pick from.
Makes sense. So I'd like to encourage everyone to please post in your questions to the public chat for me to ask Dennis so we can learn from everything.
Most people want to know if and now Aaron Rodgers was a fun guy, and he actually was fun. We joked in the commercial breaks and things like that. I made fun of his shoes. He liked my outfits. I mean, we are 6 to 8 feet away from each other, but we did have a little banter going on. He's a very smart man who did a very difficult job guest hosting really, really well.
Nice. Was your goal to be on Jeopardy when Alex Trebek was the host, or were you happy with?
Yeah, I would have loved to have met Alex Trebek. I was a little disappointed when I didn't get the call until January and he died in November. The goal really was to be on Jeopardy. The secondary goal was to meet Alex Trebek. So I achieved the primary goal. You know, was it worth 30 years of work? You're damn right.
Nice. Dennis, have you changed for having achieved this milestone? Question from Elliot.
Have I changed? I'd like to think that I haven't, but I find myself more open to doing promotional things. Like I ended up doing 2 radio interviews and a television interview. I did a blog from a guy in London who covers game shows, and Toastmasters International is supposed to be writing an article. So I've never really thought about self-promotion that much before, but you know, I guess I've become more open to it.
Wonderful. We like to hear about it. The next question that's coming in through chat. Who finally bumped you off and how close was the last day?
The last day was actually very close. If I had gotten the final Jeopardy answer correct, I would have won because he's not here, I can say it. The person who ended up winning made a stupid bet. And which allowed me, if I had gotten the final answer right, it would have allowed me to overtake him. It was a question on astronomy, and they basically asked the important parts of the question was this constellation, which has a weapon, contains one of the nebulas that you can see with the visible eye. And the answer that I put down, because it was the only constellation I could think of with a weapon, was Sagittarius, and the answer ended up being Orion. Orion is the name of my great nephew. So my sister has been ready to kill me over missing that one. And I thought of Orion, but I didn't think it was the right answer. So, but that's the question that deep sixed me. And if I had gotten it right, I would have beaten the second place person and the first place person. And I felt really bad for, sorry, I came in second, the person in position 2. I felt really bad for her because she wrote down Orion and crossed it out.
Oh,
So if we had both gotten it, I would have beaten her. But if she had gotten it by herself, she would have won also. The
tough.
guy who won, what I believe, is a preacher from Modesto, and he only lasted for that one show. He got beaten the next show. It is really hard to defend because you're nervous to begin with, but it's like, oh, I want to prove that it wasn't a fluke and that I could actually win again. So I felt really good when I won the second day, and I was really calm. I mean, that was I don't want to say that any of it is a breeze because you're under a lot of lights, you're under a lot of pressure. You have to think of everything very quickly. But the second day, I must admit, was much easier than the first day for some reason. Maybe I was used to it.
Yes, with practice. Are you going on to compete in similar quiz shows or other game shows? Question from Janice.
Yeah, I would love to. Those of you who have ever tried out for a game show know that you can only be on one game show per year. So I actually can't appear on anything until April of 2021. If the Chase were to call back, I would probably be on that show. I would be on Millionaire. I would love to be on the Great American Baking Show, which I could be now because it's a reality show. It's not a game show. But we'll see what comes up. I've now been on Wheel and Jeopardy. So, what's going to make the third leg of the triangle? I'm not sure.
That's cool. I hope to see you on the baking show. That would be fun.
Yeah, that's a whole different set of skills.
Yes, baking is challenging. Let's see, any,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing I like about baking is that, like what we do, at Genentech, it's very scientific. I mean, there is an art to it too, but usually if you follow the recipe and you follow the instructions, it comes out the same way every time. So I appreciate that precision. You actually, sorry, I just saw Susan's question. Wheel and Jeopardy are produced by the same people, but there's no rule that says if you were on Wheel, you can't be on Jeopardy or vice versa. I was on Wheel in 1991. When I was in LA and tried out for Jeopardy in 1990, I also tried out for Wheel in 1990, and I got on Wheel. So there's very similar experience between being on Wheel and being on Jeopardy, except the audition process is very different. In Wheel, they want really perky people who get excited. So the entire time I auditioned for Wheel, I clapped like this. And tried to be excited and tried to be interesting. On Jeopardy, obviously, they want you to come across as smart. I tried to do that. But other than that, the day in the life of the contestants is extremely similar.
Interesting. I'm curious, how has it changed in the game show world from the 1990s to 2021?
Well, the biggest change was all the COVID restrictions. We didn't really get within 6 feet of anybody. You had masks on the whole time. You didn't have hair and makeup people. You had to do it yourself. They didn't give you any food except for lunch, and the lunches were pretty darn good. Everything took slower because, like, for example, during the rehearsal, you have basically 5 sets of contestants, and the first 3 contestants come up and they play their half round, and then they leave, and the entire set has to be sprayed down. And then the next 3 people, so like the rehearsal takes longer. It takes a little bit longer to tape the shows. I showed up at 7 a.m. on the first day, and I got home at 8 p.m. So that was a very long day, and my adrenaline was running the whole time. I had no problem sleeping that night. And then the second day, I'm up there, I'm on in there at 7 a.m. I think I got out about 2 p.m. because I stayed to have the free lunch. So they used to say that Alex, when he was doing the show, liked to be able to leave for home by 4 p.m. So, without the COVID restrictions, and when you have a host that has everything down, you can go a lot more quickly.
Amazing. Next question. Did being on Wheel prepare you for being on Jeopardy?
Yeah, I knew what to expect. I knew that there would be lights in my face. So when I practiced Jeopardy at home with the live show, I would stand, I would put lights in my face like I have now, and I would practice with the buzzer. I knew that playing the show as many times as possible is a good way to study. So that was true for Jeopardy as well. I knew what stuff to wear on TV, like you don't wear polka dots, you don't wear big stripes. So that was good preparation. I kind of knew what being a contestant was about. Like, you can't ever talk to the host when you're not on the show itself. You only talk to the people that they say you can talk to, because it's all about the rules about who knows the answers and who doesn't. So, like when I was on Wheel, I wanted an autographed picture of Vanna White. So I had to tell the contestant coordinator, who walked it over to Vanna's assistant, who got the autographed picture, and then they walked it back to the contestant coordinator and they gave it to me. I couldn't walk up to Vanna White and say, please give me an autographed picture. So all of that I was familiar with. Plus I knew where the studio was.
Nice, good preparation. Did you feel that gave you an advantage over other contestants during the show?
I feel, and I've said this many times, I feel that having been in stage and theater shows and having been in Toastmasters absolutely gave me an advantage, because I know how to handle myself under a pressure situation. I know how to speak eloquently in a pressure situation. I know how to respond quickly, like in table topics. I think I mentioned during the audition process, I know how to project. I know how to appear to be perky. I know how to show energy on camera. All of that absolutely helped. And that's probably why I got on the show.
Awesome. That means we're all on our way to being on a Jeopardy game
Yeah,
show.
and it's not for everybody. You have to have a competitive streak. I've talked to many people who said, oh my God, I could never do that. I'm not one of those people who said I could never do that. I did College Bowl, I do trivia contests, so I knew I could do it. And you have to have a certain level of confidence that you can do well, or else why bother?
For sure. I'm kind of curious, have you kept in touch with any of the other contestants that you were on the show with?
There is a Facebook page for Jeopardy contestants, actually for real contestants also. So I'd say there's about a dozen people who I've kept in contact with, and we talk about having to wait for your show to come up and things like that. So they're really supportive. They're a bunch of good people. I actually did have a stalker for a while, somebody on Facebook who was saying and doing inappropriate things. And this week I finally said, this is it, we're done. So I cut the person off. But the social media coverage has been, for the most part, really positive. There was one person who was talking to my neighbor, and when he said he knew that the winner on Jeopardy, he said, "Oh, was it the old guy or the fat guy?" And so I was fine to take the old guy, but I've kind of turned that around in interviews. Most of the contestants were in their 30s, and I'm not in my 30s. So as I said to one of the interviewers, I'm fine with being a spokesperson for people over 50 to show that they can still do well on game shows and answer questions well and still have a brain. So anybody who wants me to be an over 50 spokesperson for the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of goals, I'm happy to do that.
Lovely. Yeah, I think that would be an advantage to have more knowledge.
Yeah, your reflexes are a bit better when you're younger, but oh, that's one more thing I'll mention too. Social media was all a Twitter, bad choice of words, about how I did the buzzer. Now I had a shoulder injury. I actually still have it, but it was kind of a necessity. So I basically held my arm like this because it was the only comfortable position for my arm. And then the buzzer went in here, and then I used my index finger because it's faster than your thumb. You would have think that I reinvented, some new process or something, because everybody was talking about, what's the deal with how he uses the buzzer and the buzzer, the buzzer, the buzzer? And I was like, well, it worked.
Definitely. We are running low on time. Does
Okay.
anybody have any last lingering questions to ask Dennis before we wrap up? Dennis, do you have any final comments to share with your audience as we wrap up tonight?
If anybody is interested in trying out for a game show, I could give them additional tips and pointers, but overall, it was a fun experience. I'm glad I finally made it onto the show. I showed you the shirt. This isn't official Jeopardy swag, but I finally have my Jeopardy champion T-shirt. So you may see this in future meetings coming up.
We look forward to it, and you are an inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
So now I will like to tell everyone that if you would like to contact Dennis, he will share his email and you can reach out to him. And that is dchasesfo@gmail.com. You can ask him any questions about Jeopardy or anything else. Also, a feedback form link will be posted in the chat. Please take a moment to fill that out if you have time and tell us what you thought about the program. And also don't forget to join us for the district contest and Hall of Fame on Saturday, May 29th at 8:30 a.m. So now I would like to ask everyone to please unmute and unhide your videos in order to applause and thank Dennis for his time today and sharing his experience.
Bravo, Dennis. Really nice.
Great job.
And like I said, you'll probably see an article in the Toastmasters magazine online about me. I've already done the interview. They haven't shown me the draft yet, but it's supposed to be coming out soon.
Good.
Wonderful. So everyone is welcome to stay in the Zoom and continue connecting with each other's. Otherwise, this session is adjourned.
I'm gonna have
So
to
thank
get
you so
going,
much,
but
everyone.
appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dennis.
Bye, Terry.
Thank you, Dennis, for what an inspiring talk, and Megan, amazing moderation. I know you have
Great
to,
job.
when you gotta go, you gotta go, but
Okay,
thank you for moderating this session.
no
Oh
problem.
my gosh, Dennis, what poise and determination to, to really tackle this. Oh my gosh, I'm just, and so patiently. Like if I had wanted something for 30 years, I think 30 years later, I'd be like, I'm there. Oh, I missed it. Like, I think I would have, I would totally have not been prepared for the moment in the way that you were. I mean, that was just inspiring.
Well, I think it helped that I didn't realize that I had won until like just before the final Jeopardy came up, because I wasn't looking at the scores. I actually listened to the advice. So, the scores are over here. I'm not even paying attention to them. And then I hit the last daily double and I look over and I'm like, oh, I can make this a runaway, which you always want to do. A runaway is when you have double the second place person's score, so they can't wager anything in Final Jeopardy to beat you. And the host actually said, this is a runaway. And I just kind of went, oh my God, it's a runaway. Oh my God, I've actually won. So I tried not to be overwhelmed by that moment. And I think Toastmasters helps in that regard as well. When I've won speech contests that I wasn't expected to, you learn to have that poise. And yeah, I mean, my second game was a runaway too. So there's a certain amount of politeness that you need to have. All the Jeopardy contestants were really nice to each other. Everybody was rooting for each other. You don't turn to somebody and say, yeah, I really stomped you. And even the people, now they make t-shirts like this for people who came in second and third, and it says Jeopardy silver medalist and Jeopardy bronze medalist. And I think that's really cool, because everybody went through a lot to get on the show. They went through a lot of interviews. They had to fly or drive to Los Angeles. They had to pick out their best outfits. They had to do their own makeup. So, even people who only get $1,000 or $2,000 for coming in second or third, they deserve kudos too, because they went through a lot. I mean, they had to beat out 150,000 people.
Amazing.
I love it. So great. You did a great job, Dennis. I enjoyed watching you. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun for me too. And you know, I try not to dwell on Orion.
But you can't help it.
Especially since it's my great nephew's name. And you know, I just say to myself, there are very few people who would have made it to the show, very few people who would have won $50,000. So be content with that.
Yeah, he does. That's why his sister's gonna kill him. Tell me about it.
But I felt better when my sister missed the question too. She didn't even get it. And her grandson's name is Orion. So yeah, you know, I get to claim something that not many people can. So would I do it all again? Absolutely. Will I do it on another show? Absolutely. We'll see what happens.
We're waiting for you to win that British baking show, you know?
Yeah, the American version. That's actually the American version. Yeah, that's a lot of fun too.
After the tart you have in the fridge, how can you lose?
Now I have a tort that I'm bringing to game night tonight. So that's going to be good. So speaking of that, I actually need to go because I'm due there in like 20 minutes. So I'm going to say thank you for your support.
Thank you for your presentation.
See you later. Thanks, Dennis.
And seriously, if anybody's interested in being on the show, send me a note.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Susan. See you Tuesday.
I'll get this in that folder. It starts rendering after we close.
Yep, and I recorded it all. Denise and I both recorded it because I didn't know if I don't think I put it in the script, so I felt like I had to do it. So I think I recorded to cloud. Denise, did you record it to the cloud? I don't know. I don't think it matters. I'm low blood sugar. I haven't eaten since breakfast, so I better go grab myself some food. But it's been a day, and now let's just focus on the contest. And wow.
And I'll start looping you in on things. So that
That would be great because yeah, you offered to include me in your meetings, and it would really help me to see your machine in the works because I got to build my own. I need to do it now.
I know that's like the scariest thing. And we can talk more when we're not being recorded about it. But it's
You know
true
what?
that, yeah.
We'll cut it off. It's not like we're going to say
Oh, yeah, that's true. We can stop the recording.
Yeah.
There we go.